Hello Nigerians, we have a breaking news, and this is very serious. Today we are talking about the men who want to run this country in 2027, and how even before the real campaign has properly begun, the gloves have already come off. I want you to stay with me from beginning to end, because by the time we finish, you will understand exactly what is happening between the corridors of power in Abuja, the camp of Peter Obi in Onitsha, and the ruling party's own campaign house, where trouble is brewing quietly. This story matters because it is landing at a very sensitive moment. INEC has just lifted the ban on political campaigns. The 2027 race has officially begun. And already, we are seeing threats, we are seeing dares, and we are seeing controversy inside the ruling party's own campaign structure. Before I continue, please, if you are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, tap the like, and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss any update as this story develops. Your support is what keeps Naija News Online on the ground for you. Now, back to the news. Let us set the scene properly. On Wednesday, August 19, 2026, the Independent National Electoral Commission formally lifted the ban on political campaigns across the country. That means, as of that date, every registered political party and every candidate has a 6-month window to canvass for votes ahead of the 2027 general election. This is not some small technical announcement. This is the starting gun. And the moment that gun sounded, 3 separate storylines exploded almost at once. And we are going to walk through all 3 of them tonight, one after the other, carefully. The first storyline: the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, coming out to publicly warn, and I use his own framing, that his mission is to keep opposition heavyweights Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi under pressure. The second storyline: Peter Obi formally launching his presidential campaign in his hometown of Onitsha and throwing down a direct challenge to every single rival, including the sitting president. And the third storyline: trouble brewing inside the All Progressives Congress itself over who exactly sits on their presidential campaign council and what some of those names carry with them. Let's take them one at a time, starting with Wike. Here is what we know for certain as documented fact. On Friday, August 21st, 2026, in Abuja, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, spoke to journalists while inspecting ongoing infrastructure projects across the territory. He was responding to questions about how opposition figures were reacting to his recent political activities. Activities that include his meeting with Osun State Governor-elect Ademola Adeleke. And Wike did not hold back. He told reporters plainly that he is not interested in making his political opponents constable. His words, paraphrased from multiple outlets that covered the briefing, that his business is to make sure the people on the other side are not sitting easy. That if he knew exactly how uncomfortable Atiku and Obi already are, he would add more pressure on top of it. He went further, dismissing the very idea that there is currently a strong and unified opposition capable of taking on the APC. According to him, the internal crisis inside the People's Democratic Party has so weakened that platform that, in his own words, there is presently no clear opposition leader in the country. Strong talk from a man who remains on paper still a card-carrying member of the PDP, even while backing President Tinubu's re-election bid. Now, let's go deeper into exactly what he said, because the specifics matter here. Wike told journalists that how Atiku feels, how Obi feels, does not trouble him one bit. That it does not, in his words, give him a headache. This was not a one-off statement either. Multiple Nigerian outlets, Tribune, Daily Trust, Legit, PM News, and others, all carried versions of the same briefing, with Wike repeatedly returning to the imagery of giving his opponents, quote, high blood pressure. And this was not happening in a vacuum. On the Thursday before that briefing, Wike had already gone after Atiku directly, describing him, again his own characterization, as a voodoo economist, specifically over Atiku's promise to restore the petrol subsidy if he wins in 2027. Wike accused the former vice president of shifting his position on subsidy removal purely for political convenience. As for Peter Obi, Wike has on separate occasions before this dismissed his presidential ambition altogether, branding him what he called a social media presidential candidate. So when Wike talks about giving these men high blood pressure, he is not starting something new. He is escalating a rivalry that has been simmering for months.
Let's separate fact from interpretation here, because that is important in a story like this. What is fact? Wike said these words on the record to journalists on Friday, August 21st, 2026 in Abuja. That is documented, quoted, and consistent across multiple independent news organizations. What is interpretation, what is allegation, is everything around the motive. Is Wike speaking as a loyal member of the Tinubu government, simply defending his principle and calling out a weak, disorganized opposition? Nothing more than blunt Nigerian politics as usual. His critics, on the other hand, argue that a sitting Federal Capital Territory minister, using his office and his access to journalists to openly boast about wanting to inflict psychological pressure on named political rivals, crosses a line, that the tone is less statesman, more street fighter. I will let you, the viewer, weigh that for yourself, because that is exactly what a story like this demands.
Now think about what this actually means for the two men on the receiving end. Atiku Abubakar is no longer contesting under the PDP banner he ran under in 2023. He has since moved to the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, and is positioning that platform as his vehicle for a fresh run at the presidency in 2027. Peter Obi, for his part, contested 2023 on the Labour Party ticket, famously energizing what became known as the Obedient Movement, young, urban, socially engaged Nigerians who saw in him something different from the old guard. Obi has since moved on from Labour Party and is now positioning himself, as we will get into shortly, under a new platform for another presidential run. Wike's dismissal, his claim that there is, quote, no opposition right now, is itself a claim worth interrogating. Because if you strip away the theatrics, what Wike is really describing is a fragmented opposition landscape. PDP weakened by internal wrangling, Atiku building fresh on the ADC, Obi building fresh on his own new platform, and talk of a broader opposition coalition still very much a work in progress. Whether that fragmentation is fatal or whether it eventually consolidates into something formidable by election time is one of the genuinely open questions hanging over this entire election cycle. Let's also talk about something else Wike said in that same briefing, because it connects directly to recent events on the ground. He addressed Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State directly, following Adeleke's recent political meetings with President Tinubu and with Wike himself in Abuja. Adeleke had just won re-election on August 15, 2026, but crucially, not on the PDP platform. He ran and won under the Accord Party banner after exiting the PDP. Wike insisted that Adeleke remains in spirit a PDP man, but had to find another platform because of the internal wrangling inside the party. He rejected the idea, an idea being pushed by some opposition voices, that Adeleke's victory represented some kind of boost for the anti-APC opposition coalition. Instead, he framed it as further evidence of PDP's internal collapse, not opposition strength. And he went even further, predicting what he called a larger rainbow coalition forming in support of President Tinubu, built on exactly this kind of political realignment. Now, here is what remains contested. Political analysts on the other side argue that Adeleke's win, regardless of which party ticket he used, is still a defeat handed to the APC in a state the ruling party controlled the federal purse for. That is a fact the APC has to sit with, whatever Wike's framing. Now, let us turn to our second major storyline today. Peter Obi and the moment he formally kicked off his own 2027 presidential campaign. This happened on the very same day, Friday, August 21st, 2026, at a press conference at his residence in Onitsha, Anambra State. This was Obi marking the official commencement of his presidential and National Assembly campaign, running alongside his chosen running mate, Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso. And Obi did not waste time with pleasantries. He went straight for what he framed as the defining question of this election. Can every candidate stand before Nigerians and defend their record without hiding behind aides, proxies, or surrogates? His exact words, and I am quoting him directly here because the phrasing is central to his message. Every candidate must be willing to present their credentials, defend their records, and subject their vision to open scrutiny. He continued, warning that no candidate should hide behind what he called the high walls of power or send proxies and surrogates to the campaign trail while expecting Nigerians to hand them the mandate to govern.
This was not a vague, generic dare. Obi named names. He specifically called out President Bola Tinubu and Atiku Abubakar, alongside other declared candidates, telling them all to face Nigerian voters directly and justify why they deserve the country's highest office. He committed on record that he and Senator Kwankwaso would personally take their campaign message across the country, not through representatives, not through proxies, but face-to-face with citizens. Here is Obi's own language on this. We will not delegate this duty to proxies. We will answer questions, defend our record and character, and present our plan to rebuild Nigeria. He then made a pointed argument about capacity to govern, suggesting that any candidate unwilling to physically travel across this country, meet ordinary people, and answer their hard questions simply lacks what it takes to run Nigeria. That is a direct shot, whether or not he named every single target by name in that particular line. And political observers immediately noted who that line was most obviously aimed at: sitting office holders who campaign largely through surrogates, state apparatus, and tightly controlled public appearances.
Now, let's be fair and balanced here, because that is what proper journalism demands. Obi also turned that same standard on himself. He told the assembled press that his own record as governor of Anambra State should be laid open for exactly the same scrutiny he is demanding of his rivals. He pointed to his tenure's focus on education, healthcare, infrastructure, fiscal discipline, and institutional capacity building, while explicitly acknowledging, and this is worth noting because politicians rarely admit this on camera, that his record in Anambra was not perfect. He invited Nigerians to examine it honestly and compare it with what his rivals can show for their own time in office. He also laid out in that same press conference some of the specific national challenges he says his administration would tackle: poverty, food insecurity, the millions of Nigerians internally displaced by conflict and insecurity, and the millions of young people entering the labor market every year without enough productive jobs waiting for them. His central campaign message, in his own words, is that Nigeria can work and Nigeria must work. Now, here is where fact ends and political contest begins. Whether his Anambra record truly holds up under the scrutiny he himself is inviting is something opposition rivals and independent analysts will be picking apart in the weeks ahead. And that scrutiny cuts both ways, exactly as he requested.
Let's move now to our third storyline, and this one is happening quietly inside the ruling party's own house. The APC recently unveiled its 2027 Presidential Campaign Council, with the Director General role going to Senator Abdulaziz Yari. On the surface, this looked like a routine, expected step as the ruling party organizes for Tinubu's re-election bid. But almost immediately, the composition of that council began generating real controversy. Party sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, suggested that some of the appointments were shaped by concerns within the presidency about the loyalty of politicians who joined the APC through recent defections. The suggestion being that Aso Rock was not ready to immediately hand command positions to people who moved into the party only when it became politically convenient. Other sources pushed back on that reading entirely, insisting that governors like Utu, Oborevori, Sanwo-Olu, and Abiodun were handed roles with genuine influence over grassroots mobilization and campaign resources, not ceremonial titles. But beyond the politics of who got which position, a more serious question has emerged. What about the specific individuals whose names appear on that list and what those names carry with them?
Here, we have to be very careful and very precise, separating documented fact from allegation. Nigeria Revenue Service Chairman Zaki Adedeji was named Deputy Director of Fundraising on the council, an appointment that drew public criticism, including pointed remarks from former Kogi West Senator Dino Melaye. Also on the list is an Assistant Secretary whose past tenure as Managing Director of the Nigerian Ports Authority was marked by suspension tied to allegations involving roughly 165 billion naira in unremitted operating surplus. Now, fact, an investigative panel did examine that matter. Fact, that panel did not find her guilty of financial misappropriation, but it did criticize her conduct regarding official directives and insubordination, and that dispute involved her then supervising minister, Rotimi Amici, who, in a twist of Nigerian politics, is now the ADC's vice presidential candidate on the opposition side. Separately, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, serving as Southwest Zonal Campaign Coordinator, remains publicly associated with an EFCC investigation involving the Lagos State government, and Chief of Staff Femi Bajabiamilo was questioned by the ICPC back in July 2026 over what was described as a purportedly fictitious Presidential Foreign Investment Promotion Council. I want to stress, as fair reporting demands, there is no evidence that the APC suppressed any of these investigations or traded appointments for leniency. What critics argue is narrower and more subtle, that the ruling party chose to build its most important campaign structure with figures whose records carry unresolved controversy, and that this choice itself sends a message to voters, whatever the eventual legal outcomes turn out to be. And the controversy did not stop at questions over who is on the list. This week, rumors began circulating that the APC had actually withdrawn its entire Presidential Campaign Council list altogether. On Tuesday, August 25, 2026, APC National Publicity Secretary Felix Moka moved quickly to shut that down, describing the reports as nothing more than rumor and promising that the party would formally announce any changes if and when they actually happen. Whether that denial fully closes the matter or whether we see further developments in the days ahead remains something worth watching closely. Then there is Edo State, where things turned genuinely ugly. A Facebook post by one Samuel Iyobosa claimed that Governor Monday Okwegbolo had traveled to Abuja to protest his own alleged exclusion from the APC Presidential Campaign Council. In response, the Edo APC chairman, Jarrett Tenebe, did not simply deny the claim, he threatened the man's life. His documented words on the record: "Bastard, stop lying, and if you continue, you die." I want you to sit with that for a moment. That is not political rhetoric, that is a direct personal threat from a sitting party chairman against an ordinary citizen who posted his opinion on social media. Whatever the truth of the underlying claim about Okwebolo's exclusion, that response from Teneme is on its own a serious story and one Nigerians should be demanding accountability for. There is one more thread worth pulling before we close tonight, because it shows this controversy is not confined to the national stage. It is playing out in the state too. In Ondo State, fresh political realignment has stirred real trouble inside the APC, following allegations that Governor Lucky Ayedatiwa shifted his support away from the party's own Ondo South senatorial candidate, Isaac Kekemeke, toward Matthew Oyerinmadi of the opposition PDP. Kekemeke, a former APC Southwest vice chairman and known ally of the governor, had emerged as the APC's candidate for that seat, despite it being the only one of the governor's 3 preferred senatorial picks that survived the party's national screening. That kind of internal contradiction, a governor allegedly backing an opposition candidate over his own party's man, is exactly the sort of story that erodes public trust in party discipline right at the moment the APC needs unity most. Now, let's connect all of this to what it actually means for ordinary Nigerians watching from home. While politicians trade threats, dares, and accusations, the real issues Obi listed in his own launch speech remain unresolved on the ground.
poverty, insecurity, unemployment, unreliable electricity, weak infrastructure, and the high cost of simply doing business in this country. Every minute spent on political theater, on who is threatening who, on who sits on which campaign council, is a minute not spent addressing those daily realities. That contrast between the noise of politics and the silence around solutions is something every Nigerian voter should keep firmly in mind between now and election day.
So where does this leave us tonight? My honest take is simple. Nigerians deserve exactly what Peter Obi is demanding of his rivals: open scrutiny, documented records, and direct engagement, not theatrics and not threats. Whatever you think of Wike's combative style, or Obi's challenge, or the APC's internal troubles, the standard should be the same for everyone seeking this office. Transparency first, accountability second, and let due process, not political convenience, settle every unresolved allegation hanging over any name on any campaign council. Here's what I want you to keep watching for. Will the APC formally clarify or reshuffle its campaign council list in the coming days? Will Governor Okwepuola respond publicly to the claims about his exclusion? And will there be any accountability for Jared Tenebe's threat? Will Atiku and Obi respond directly to Wike's remarks or continue to ignore him as he claims they should? And will Ondo State's APC leadership address Governor Ayedatiwa's alleged defection of support before it costs them a seat? These are the threads we will be pulling on in the days ahead, and I promise to bring every update straight to you first, right here. If tonight's report opened your eyes to something you did not know before, do me a favor, like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, drop your own thoughts in the comment section below, and if you have not subscribed yet, please do so now, because this story and many like it are only just beginning. This has been your report from the heart of Nigerian politics. I am your anchor here at Naija News Online, and until next time, stay informed, stay alert, and stay with us.